Okay, so what is a podcast, right? Okay. A podcast is an audio content available online you can download and listen to. It's actually an intimate media with a catchy storytelling, and you always have the feelings that the host is speaking directly to you, compared with the radio, for example, that it's one-to-many media. I found out podcasting in the US. I was there working for a company in Nashville, by the way, amazing city. I started with Serial. This is one of the most famous podcasts in the US, and Tim Ferriss show. And I fell in love with that. So I started to think about this kind of communication, this kind of media, also in Italy. And maybe that was the moment where I realized we can do something in Italy about podcasting. So why I came back from US to Italy to start a company where US is usually considered the most incredible place where to grow up a company. Just because we saw an opportunity in Italy. We saw we were first on the market. I had already a lot of contacts here in Italy. My partner was from here, and I decided to come back and to quit my job there, to start a company here, to gain a market advantage. So first steps were to validate the product, and we did that by what is called a concierge MVP. It's basically a kind of product that you fake to the people. It's actually all automatic. Instead, you behind the lines are moving all the pieces. So we started with personalized playlist we were giving to the people, and we measured the interest on this kind of product, and the interest was high. So we started to build something more complex, and that was the start of Fortune as the company that is right now. In parallel, obviously, there was the team. We met in the startup weekend of Parma. It was 2017, and since then a lot of people that were part of the original team are still collaborating with the company, and the company itself, 50% of the company itself is made up the same team members of that moment. I don't believe actually in here I go, there's a new life, I drop off everything, and there's a new me here. It's not an event, actually, it's a process, and what we did was taking some validation on the idea of having a startup, the startup itself, the team, and that was in parallel with my previous job and with the previous job of all the members. I think it's necessary to understand what they're gonna do. It's not, okay, I'm an engineer and I'm going to teach yoga in the Maldives. I think it's a fundamental process because you need to understand what you're gonna expect and do in the following years, and having startups take, I think, 100% of the energy out of you, and you need to be aware that you're gonna have a lot of roller coaster moments, and that means you want a startup, your startup, like breathing, and a period of understanding of this is fundamental. So that was what we did, and after 1 year of double work, weekend work, night work, we understand that was the moment, and we take the leap. Two reactions basically: you're great, and this is a bad idea. I think it doesn't depend about how many people gives you a response. It depends by what you want to hear from the people, and maybe it's just necessary one that gives you the right advice, and you're gonna do this. So luckily my family was on my part, and that was the most important thing. So I started, I think, thanks to them. The podcast personalization was a really beginning. There was a couple of competitors worldwide, so we took a lot of time in the competitor understanding. We made a list of 100 competitors, more or less, direct or indirect, in at every level, every company dimension, because the market was evolving really, really fast. So we wanted to be aware of what were happening outside our world, actually inside our world, and we selected a short list of 25, and we were on their social, on their newsletter, on their website every week to understand what was going on. In a market that's really evolving, your partner today could be your competitor tomorrow. So it was really important to have a clear vision of what, regarding what was happening. There were actually at that time just a couple of companies that were directed towards personalization, and we believed that was the main direction of the audio, generally speaking, having something personalized to me, direct to my ears. That's because the barrier to listening to audio is really higher compared to watching a video. And lowering that barrier means having more people and more content listened. Anchor, it's a really interesting company. It's pushing really fast. It's directed to a fast and easy creation to content, and it's directed to segmentation of people that is actually younger to the usual podcast listeners. But these young people are used to another thing, that are WhatsApp audio, Telegram audio, and so they are used to audio, but they're not used to do in a professional way. And Anchor is the perfect bridge for this generation to let them enter in this mood, and I think it's really powerful. They made some mistakes regarding the RSS property in the past, so they lost professionals in this kind of environment. But anyway, I think they are moving really well for this target. So it's someone we have in our short list. Okay, we produce content. We are lucky in some ways because we can look at the American market and see what happened there. They're like 2-3 years in advance compared to us. And what happened was, at first, there were a lot of independent producers. Now, there are really a few main networks that produce content. So we believe the content production is something we need to position ourselves as leaders in this market. And we started as a copycat of the American market, so we started with crime fiction, and then we moved to business and tech, open innovation, startup topics, because podcast listeners are really used to listen to this kind of content. It's a challenge producing content, but we really love it. In our team, 60% of us have experience in producing content, or in radio, or in podcast itself. So it's a challenge, but it's at the same time something we really love to do. So it's perfect. Our model is two-sided. So on one side we have B2C, and so users pays a fee to listen to extra content. This is a model similar to Acast, that is a Swedish competitor. They raised $35 million in the last 2 years. We choose this strategy to differentiate by other subscription systems like Spotify or like Storytel or Audible to differentiate our model. And we believe this is the key, because once a person listens to podcasts, he or she usually becomes addicted to it. And so putting extra content is a sufficient leverage for him or her to buy a subscription. On the other side, the branded content, so these are podcasts that are paid by brands. They do that because they believe the message of the story in the podcast is aligned with the mission, core values, and vision of the company. There are a lot of business cases in the US, like General Electric, Slack, Microsoft, and we are trying to build the business case also here in Italy. Some companies are already investing in this side. One is Satispay, and we believe this is gonna change really in the short term. We decided to go to the newbies because we believe the people that already listen to podcasts are already using other apps, and it's difficult to do the transition. We would like instead to be the first touch point for a person that comes to podcasting, finding interesting the unique advantage for tuning offer. It means the personalized audio flow. So we started with the newbies and we acquiring in vertical markets like moms with stories, gaming passionate, technology passionate, a lot of different hobbies. So we are acquiring in a scattered way, and with cohort analysis we understand which kind of user is more active, is more interactive, and then we change the following campaigns based on this the bias. This was a discover during the process. We set up a line in the sand, and for each metrics we measure every 2 weeks, every sprint, our improvements. And when we crashed our first deadline, that was the moment we understand that we are going to do this. Currently we are on the iOS. We choose the iOS platform because it's full of potential podcast listeners. Podcasts are usually associated with Apple because Apple actually introduced podcast. And one of the reasons of the diffusion of the media was the Violet app in the iPhone in 2015. So thanks to Apple, usually podcast listeners are also Apple users. And we started with Apple. We have also a web page for Android users, and we are developing skills for Alexa, and we will go. And these are the next steps we are aiming.